Well, my name is Dean Monigold. I was born in 1935 in Barnesdall, Oklahoma. We were born in Barnesdall, but I can't remember. I don't know whose house it was or what it was, but I think we came into town because Doc Chase, his house was right across the street from where we were born. Bonnie was born first, and he said, "I'll be back in about 30 minutes." He went back. He went home and went across the street. He came back over, and then they say I was born. Now, this is what I was told. Grandma Jeter kept us behind the stove, in a shoebox. And together we weighed about 5 pounds because we were 7-month-old babies and twins. They always said we fit in a little shoebox, and they kept us warm by putting us behind this stove in the corner, and to keep us warm because all they had was gas heat. We lived about 4 or 5 miles from my grandparents, and it was kind of out in the country. It wasn't in Barnesdall; it was out of town. And my mother and dad, they didn't get along, and my mother just took as much as she could, and well, I'll tell you what it was. He kind of played he played a guitar or something, and he kind of would play with the band sometimes. And when he did, my mother would get out and dance with whoever asked her, Anyway, he was a real jealous person. Well, when we get home, they would argue and fight. Well, this one time, he slapped her around, and after he went to bed or was passed out or whatever, I remember getting up in the middle of the night, and Bonnie was asleep, and she carried Bonnie, and she told me to shut up and go with her. Be quiet. And back then they had the cars. They had a place behind the seat. When she took Bonnie and led her up in there, she was still asleep. And we went to out to Grandpa and Grandma and Grandpa's farm, which was about 4 or 5 miles away. And we went over there in the middle of the night. And Grandpa, he was quite a man. He more or less raised me. He's my father until my mother remarried. It was really good. I went with Grandpa all the time. My twin sister, she stayed there with Grandma. But we'd go and he'd start those big old power plants up. And once he got them running, well, we'd go fishing or doing something and waiting for them to, pump. And I remember a lot of times when we were fishing, well, back then money was tight, Well, he'd get his hook hooked up in the bottom of in the water. And I was like 7 or 8 years old. He said, "Go in there and get that hook." And I have to go in the fishing hole, whatever, and go down under the water and unhook that hook and bring it back up then, because to him, a dollar was a dollar, I was always a good swimmer after that. I learned how to swim when I was about 5 years old.
And Bonnie didn't want to do any of that stuff?
No, you know how girls are. She stayed home with Grandma, and I went with Grandpa. I mean, it was just, Bonnie could always, if we had a little trouble, little argument, she wouldn't get in trouble because she's the one that started it. I got told to do what you're supposed to do or whatever, but and we didn't have that many arguments or anything, but you know how kids are. Once you have a little argument, well, she would get by with it. But me, I always caught it because I'm the one that I would get onto her, and then I would get caught. I don't know how old I was, probably 11 or 12 or something. She was about 4 inches taller than me. We have pictures taken. They had pictures of all the twins in school taken, and Bonnie and I took one, and she's about that much taller than me. Back then, probably didn't care, but later on, it embarrassed me. We didn't have any electricity. We didn't have any water, not any inside water. We had a real good well outside. It was my job to go carry a bucket or two in every day, And it was really good water for well water, Like I said, he pumped this gas, and but he'd use that gas. He'd pop that gas into the house, and we had like gas lights, heating stove or cooking stove, and we had an outhouse. It was about 100 yards out behind the house, and when you needed to go potty, well, you had to go to the house. They had a school out there, Plymouth, I think it was called. There was I went there for 2 years and went to Barnesdall, went to high school. Raymond's mom was married when we moved to town, and Raymond's dad is named Mark Clark, and he lived up on the corner of where Main Street hits the highway that went to Pawhuska. Well, right on that corner was this big old house. That was Mark Clark's house. That's where Raymond and them lived. And I remember when Burl was born, Mother, I guess when she got out of the hospital, for some reason we were staying in that house. And Burl was born when we lived in that house. And I'm 12 years older than him, so I was about 12 years old, when he was born, and it was in that little house up there on the highway going to Pawhuska, and and Raymond was always good to me. He wasn't mean or anything like that. He only got onto me one time. And I went to town at night. We'd walk uptown, stay up there, and all of us boys, and do nothing really. But this one time, I was supposed to go uptown to the drugstore and get a prescription, but I didn't do it. I forgot. And that's the only time that he ever got onto me. They come to town to find me, I guess. And it was just an accident. I mean, I didn't do it on purpose, but it was something I should have taken care of. And that's the only time that he ever said a bad word to me, and I deserved it. And there's not much to say about Mom, except she was a good mom. She, we left Oro so young at 4 years old. What do you remember at 4? But anyway, when she married Raymond and we moved to town, well, we had a good life, a happy life, and she worked in Blevins and she worked at Clark's store across the street. They would sew women stuff, clothes and stuff like that. Blevins Arcade. There was also Miss Blevins. There was also a place you go in there and I think you could get your driver's license or get them renewed or something. She had the authority to do that. But when I would go in there, since Mother worked there, Well, they sold funny books back then, you know. Well, after funny books were in there for a while, she could tear the tops off of them and give me the funny books. But she'd say the tops because I think she got her money back on them. I don't know, you know. Anyway, I was in King's World. I had free funny books. My mother my mother bought me a Coke. She never was strict. I mean, mom's mom. You do what mom tells you, or else, you know. But no, she never was. I don't remember her ever giving me a spanking. Maybe. I mean, I wasn't a mean child anyway, so I don't think I was that bad of a child to have her punishing me so much. And I don't ever recall her getting on to me about anything, really, unless it'd be that time I forgot the medicine. When we were teenagers, somehow found out that Mother was going to buy us some bikes, and they were used bikes. Mine was a girl's bike. My first bike was a girl's bike. Bonnie's was a girl's bike too, I guess. And I remember and Raymond wasn't too happy about it, but he came by there and he gave Mother $15, I remember. And I guess that probably either bought one of them or both of them. I don't know what prices were back then, but I liked football, and I was an end, and on the offense and on the defense I was a linebacker. I was center linebacker. I used to call the defensive plays or whatever, the defense we needed for a certain play or whatever. I loved basketball too, but I liked football probably the best. I did run in track. I'll put it this way, I could outrun everybody for about 80 yards. Seriously, I mean, even the sprinters, I'd outrun them, but then I'd poop out. And they go boom, boom. I come in about second or third every time, you know. If even that, maybe maybe 4 or 5, I don't know. But yeah, I had a real good start. And I could outrun most of them. But I wasn't that much in a distant runner either. I had stamina. I could run a mile, but we had other guys that could run a mile too, you know. Well, we hitchhiked, or I did. I hitchhiked to Pawhuska, which is about 15 miles out of Barnesville. Back then, people would actually pick you up, and you weren't afraid of them, you know. They had a diving board and all this fancy stuff, you know. That's where I learned how to dive and do all the flips. And back then, it wasn't hardly anybody else. I think there was one other guy that I used to swim with, and he lived real close to the pool, right behind it. And he and I would try different dives, and I was a pretty good diver, and I could do dives that nobody else could do. I could get up there and swim every chance I could. In the summertime, almost every day. What else I'd have to do? Downtown Barnesville, and upstairs in a deal, there was this place, a room, and they used to have events there. And they used to let us kids go up there, and we'd dance and play the jukebox, you know, back then. And we'd go up there and they'd dance. For some reason or other, I'd try anything, I guess, I don't know, but I was one of the few that knew they would learn the new dance. This was the jitterbug. Back then, all they did was the waltz and the two-step and all that. Well, I learned how to jitterbug. One of the first ones. There's only 2 or 3 of us that knew how to jitterbug, and we were popular, boy. Those girls, they liked them new dances. I used to. My job at the theater was sweeping it out and cleaning it up after hours, you know. And so, but I got to get in free, and I got a free drink, like a Coke or whatever they had. And that, to me, that was a wonderful job, because I was a teenager then, going to high school. And one of my friends' sister worked there, and she sold the tickets. And I used to, for some reason or other, I can't remember now, I used to sneak in, and maybe I was sneaking somebody else in with me. I can't remember, but anyway, she always would catch me. Whatever I was doing wrong, she would catch me. And she wouldn't get mean about it, but she would say, "I can't do that. I can't let you do that." I don't know. When I graduated, I didn't even know I was going. When I graduated, my stepdad, Raymond, said, "Get in the car, we're going to Tahlequah." And we went over there, and I didn't know what was going on. They actually took me over there and got me enrolled. And that's where I met my wife.
What was the name of that college?
Northeastern State.
So you didn't even know where you were going.
I didn't know I was going. I really didn't. They had plans for me going, and you know, I was a kid. I could do what I was told. You know.
Tell me about how you met Mom.
Through her friends, I guess. She had 2 or 3 real close friends. I remember one from Muskogee. I go blank about names. Rosemary Castleberry. I don't know why I'd forget that. And then she had a couple other friends. Gene Ford. Her daddy was a school teacher, but he didn't teach there. He didn't teach at the college. He taught somewhere, probably in Tahlequah, I don't know. But anyway, I met my wife, Jane, through her friends, and we hit it off pretty good, pretty close, you know. I had this one class with her that, I'll tell you this little story. There was this one boy that really liked her, and he'd go in there and sit by her, and I'd sneak in there a little early and get over there and sit in his chair. And he didn't like it too well, but he couldn't do nothing about it. It brings back a lot of good memories. But well, I learned how to jitterbug. One of the first ones. There's only 2 or 3 of us that knew how to jitterbug, and we were good together, though. We danced good together. And once she learned how, and everybody would stand and watch us, you know. But then all the girls, they wanted to dance with me too, see. But that went good over with me, but not so good with her. Well, the way it was, back then, they were drafting, and we knew we were coming up. I say we, there's about 5 of us, 5 boys. And we decided that we would, you could join for 2 years. If they drafted you, it was for 3 years. I don't know why it was that way, but it was. And so we decided, there was about 5 of us, decided that we would all go down and join, rather. And what we didn't know is once you get in there, they'll put you where they want you. Well, we didn't stay together very long. There was, 2 of them went over here and 2 went here, and we weren't together. We didn't come out like we planned it, We we, but anyway, I spent 2 years in there. I took my basic training in Fort Bliss, Texas, and after Fort Bliss, they sent me to Fort Knox, Kentucky. That's up there where all the gold is. And I spent some time out there. They sent me to armored school. I was the tank commander for a while. I stayed on extra, and it was a trainee. I trained people how to drive a tank. And my tank was an M48. That was what it was called, an M48, and it had a 90 millimeter gun on it, and that was a big gun. But we didn't get to shoot. Only got to shoot it occasionally out on the range, practice. Well, the Army, they had things for all the troops, all the people, and this one guy found out that I could dive. I don't know how he found out, but I did a lot of swimming, and he might have saw me or someone told him or whatever. But anyway, my company commander, he didn't like it. He didn't want me to leave the country because he wanted me to stay there. Well, the other guy, he had more pull, I guess. So I ended up on the dive team, and that's where I learned and taught everybody else how to do all the flips and flops and all that.
All the stuff you learned in Pahuska.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, when I was in Kentucky, I think it was Kentucky, I remember her going home to have the baby, which was you. And back then we rode buses or trains. Most of us didn't have cars. I remember her going home and having the baby, and then I came home. This one place we stayed in, there was a woman next door. Well, I know you were named after two different women. One of them was named Julie, I think Julie, and the other was named Debbie. And Debbie was he was a military, one of my supervisors or whatever you want to call them. Wife was named Debbie, and so when we had you, we ended up naming you Julie Deborah, and I'm not sure where Julie came from, but I think it came from the lady that lived next door to us. They had a little girl, but I'm not sure if they named her. That's what I'm trying to think. I can't remember if we named it after the daughter or after her. But well, I think maybe once a month you had to go keep in contact with them. But also once every year you'd have to go and you spend like a week out in the driving your tank or whatever you're trained to do, and that lasts usually 2 or 3 years. I don't recall exactly. Floyd, Jane's dad, carried mail, and this place needed was hiring, and he found out about it, and he told me, and they hired me. Well, it was called Oilfield Research, and they gave me a brand new Chevrolet pickup, and I'd go out on oil wells. People all over around us would drill a well. They'd have me to go out there and I had a core. I'd cut a core out of they'd hook me up to their well, and I'd get a core, usually about 8 or 10 feet long, and then I'd bring that core back to the lab, and we'd run tests on it. We could tell them, we'd tell them how much oil the well would make and stuff like that. And we run, and that was this little gal we were talking about earlier. She was the boss's secretary, really, but when we run tests, she'd come downstairs and help us, because she'd run those, help test them and make, you'd have to put them in jars and shake them, and shake the oil out and all that, and run tests on them, and they could tell you, we could tell them how good of a well it was going to be, well, how, and if it wasn't going to be any good, they wouldn't spend any more money on it. It was a business. American Sackville Bay. That was when computers first came out, and they sent us this one down there. It was as big as a good night. I don't know, a car almost. It was huge, and what we had to do is the girls would type on the cards, and I'd have to program this. It was I called it a board. It had places where where you could program what to do. I know this is, I'm not explaining it very good, but my job was to take this board and take the wires, the little wires about that long, and I'd wire this board, telling it what to do. And they'd punch key cards. They run the cards through this big computer, and the board would read the cards. That was the beginning of computers, and my job was to take care of the computer room and make sure the boards, take the boards out. You'd have to reuse them. You had to pull the wires out of them, and the girls would type you other cards. And they did the payroll. They started doing the payroll with that. So every week or every month, or however. When I went to Tennessee, it was a new outfit, and they knew I had worked with and around glass. And they gave me the main job. I was the boss, the plant manager, more or less, from the outside ward, not back in the work area where Frank worked. We cut a lot of glass back there, and we could ship any size they wanted, and we had a place in the back where they'd hang the glass and run it through this furnace, and you heat it up and then let it cool, and that tempers the glass. Well, yeah, you've seen glass windows that when you bust them, they just shatter into small pieces. It's more of a safety deal. If you had a sheet of glass and it broke, it might cut a lot of people. But yeah, tempered glass had this what it was for.
I guess that's why it's called temp safe.
Temp safe, yeah. Well, I can't remember how or why, but I think a truck driver told me about this place. Ford was putting in a place to make glass, and I thought, man, that'd be a good company to be working for, Ford Motor Company. I mean, the glass, even if the glass. So I went up there and somehow got hired, and like you say, we built this house. It was just built, I think. Yeah, I got Ronnie his job. his summer job, and when he just stayed on and got in 40 years. I don't know how I learned to play golf. I just picked it up somehow. He's the first. Yeah, he belonged to the country club, and he had just took up golf. And we used to go out downstairs. He was the boss upstairs. Well, he'd come downstairs and go around behind the building and chip the ball around, and he got me interested in it. So I went out to the country club, and I didn't really join. I don't recall, but I don't really think I joined the club. Probably not. But well, after I got to playing golf, I used to go to Henrietta and play golf down there because, well, it was a reasonable price to go, and you could go down there and play. I had a hole-in-one, but that's usually a one event, you know. What can I say? It was I can't remember now. It's a sixth hole on, what was the name of that? I can't even think of the golf course. White Hawk.
Oh, was it White Hawk?
I used to go to White Hawk, and I got on out there as a marshal. And the marshal drives around in a little buggy and tells people to stay off the greens, and you know he's a policeman of the car. And that's how I got hooked up with White Hawk. And once I got out there, I could play all the golf I wanted free, you know, being the marshal. And what was the question now?
I was just asking stories about it.
Hit your hole-in-one was at White Hawk.
Oh, my hole-in-one. Well, all I remember was at White Hawk on number 6 hole. 77 probably was, 72 is generally par. 77 is not too bad. But shooting your age, I guess you can celebrate that, you know. Because a lot of times, usually people like me shoot around 80, you know. Because 72, it's kind of hard to shoot par if you play 18 holes. So yeah, 70. When I shot my age, that was probably an event to me. But I remember we would go below the dam and catch certain fish by hand. And then there's one time we went around to the side, and Ronnie, I think it was Ronnie, went up top. He had the fish that we'd caught on a chain. Well, he dropped the chain. He dropped the chain back in the water. So we lost all of our fish we found. And got on to Ronnie. We spent a lot of time down on that close to the dam because the water wasn't that deep, and you kids, we could watch you kids, let you swim. And other than that, if you went on down below, it was a lot deeper, more dangerous, you know. But it was just a place where we could fish over there underneath the dam. And you kids just swim over there, play over there, whatever.
Remember we slept in army tents?
Huh?
We slept in army.
Slept in army tents. I remember we had a couple of them. Big ones. Some of them were. One of them was anyway. I don't know. My dad worked for this lady that had this, it was kind of a nursing home, I think. But anyway, he was kind of like a cook for them. He fixed their meals for them. I didn't, you know, I don't know how good of a cook he was, but anyway, I really can't remember how he got a hold of me, but I do remember I was about 30 years old, and he wanted me to get a hold of Bonnie, which I did, and she was married to Archie Napier, and they didn't care about it too much, but they agreed to come up to where I live, and Walt, my uncle, and aunt, and Oral would come down into Okmulgee. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to explain it. I got acquainted with him. I never was close to him. We never did. We never was buddy. You know what I mean? I allowed him to be in my life with my kids, and y'all got along real well with Uncle Walt and that, you know. I don't think Oral was ever that much around because he wasn't welcome, really. I didn't do anything that was out of the ordinary or worth mentioning again. In my mind anyway. I always tried to. I never was a mean dad. I don't think. I never was a mean husband. I never did. I wasn't mean to Jane. I just enjoyed life and lived it from there. And had some great kids. A lot of people have bragged on me about my kids being good kids, and I'm serious about this because you're one of them. But we got Kim and Lori and Ronnie, and they all turned out good. And I want to take a little bit of credit for that, but I really can't. I don't know what to say is other than go to church, believe in the Lord, and try to live a decent life. I don't know what to tell you. Just try to be there for people if they need your help. What can I say? I don't know.